The air in the apex stronghold dissolved into screaming plasma and blinding white light. Reality itself fractured as the quantum rift engine roared to life, sending tremors through the metal decks. Lyra slammed her back against Marcus, a physical grounding point, against the kinetic storm tearing at her telepathic shields. She felt the rapid drumbeat of his human heart, the heat radiating from his skin. A laser bolt scorched the air inches from his face, and protective instinct surged through her veins like lightning. She thrust a hand forward, deflecting the killing strike with a telekinetic shockwave. They were out of time. It had to end here. But to understand how a telepathic prodigy and a human underdog came to shatter the limits of reality to save it, one had to look back to the gleaming halls of the Zenith Institute on Prima. A cycle ago, the very idea of standing shoulder to shoulder with a human would have been a joke. Marcus was the Academy's first human, an outcast from a world deemed primitive by the elite Celestian society. Lyra had been among the loudest voices of mockery, her telepathic brilliance blinding her to the profound resilience of a species that built themselves up with raw determination. The illusion of supremacy was a comfortable lie. Yet, prejudice collapsed in the face of sheer genius when an advanced zero-point energy equation left the Institute's greatest minds paralyzed. It was Marcus who effortlessly rewired the sequence. The electric shock of accidental touch when he handed her the solved datapad ignited a spark neither expected. The magnetic pull between them grew, forged over late-night debates in the luminous archives where his rapid, brilliant mind challenged every bias she harbored. Their alliance shifted from academic to dangerous when they bypassed the Academy's restricted servers. What they found buried in the glowing data streams was not a theoretical project, but an active, terrifying schematic. The ruling Apex Syndicate was secretly constructing a quantum rift engine. Developing world-breaking technology without moral oversight was a mathematical guarantee for systemic corruption and an existential threat to the entire galaxy. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, especially when it controls the fabric of space and time. They had to expose it. They trusted Silas, a peer with eyes the color of cold stars, believing his loyalty lay with the truth. Instead, Silas traded their discovery for a seat at the Syndicate's table, leaving Lyra and Marcus ambushed in the data vaults. Blaster fire and shattered glass became their graduation. Escaping the Institute required moving and perfect synchronization, Marcus laying down covering fire while Lyra weaponized the very air around them to tear through the barricades. They had become a single fluid unit of defiance. Finding sanctuary with Jax and the underground resistance only sharpened their resolve. Dismantling an entrenched, tyrannical regime frequently demands unimaginable personal sacrifice, a truth they both accepted as they armed themselves. Side by side, they launched their assault, sprinting through the blinding corridors of the Syndicate's fortress, rushing back into the deafening roar of the fractured present. The present slammed back into focus. Jax and the resistance fighters poured into the chamber, laying down a grid of suppressing fire, but the Syndicate's elite forces were relentless. The quantum rift engine pulsed like a captive star, throwing violent arcs of blinding energy across the room. Through the blur of motion, Silas dropped from the upper catwalk. He hurled a barrage of heavy structural beams straight at Marcus. Lyra didn't hesitate. She ripped a control console from the floor and intercepted the projectiles midair with a deafening crash. Gritting her teeth against the kinetic feedback echoing in her skull, she launched the debris back at Silas. Marcus was instantly at her side, his rifle firing in tight, controlled bursts. A microsecond of terrifying relief washed over her just to see him standing unharmed. They fought back to back, a cyclone of human precision and Celestian power. He anticipated her movements seamlessly, dropping low so she could unleash a kinetic wave over his head, shattering Silas's defenses and sending the traitor crashing into the far wall. But the victory was a fleeting spark. The engine's core shifted from blinding white to a chaotic, unstable violet. The safety limiters had completely dissolved. "It's going critical," Marcus shouted over the vibration tearing through the deck plates. He lunged for the terminal, his hands flying across the holographic interface. I can't reverse the sequence. The cascade is locked. Lyra felt the raw, tearing force of the engine trying to rip a hole in the universe. If it detonated, it wouldn't just destroy the stronghold, it would fracture the sector. She looked at Marcus. The magnetic pull between them had never been stronger. She reached out, grabbing his shoulder. The electric shock of her touch made him freeze. "I have to contain it," she said, her voice cutting through the roar of the dying machine. "No," Marcus shot back. He grabbed her hand, the heat of his grip desperate and unyielding. "We solve this together. We always do." "You solved the equation, Marcus. Now I have to balance it." She focused her power, creating a solid wall of telekinetic force between Marcus and the escalating blast radius. With a violent, deliberate shove of her mind, she threw him backward through the heavy blast doors just as they began to close. "Lyra." His voice was severed as the heavy metal sealed him safely outside. Alone in the center of the storm, Lyra turned to face the engine. She poured every ounce of her life force into a singular, impenetrable shield of kinetic energy, wrapping it tightly around the fracturing core. The heat was absolute. The power was blinding. She felt no fear, only the brilliant certainty that Marcus was safe. As the engine detonated, Lyra became a star, holding the shattered limits of reality together in a final, triumphant burst of light. "Would you like me to analyze the story's structure or explore different character endings?"